From a time when India was the toast to the world to a time when the IMF thinks that the sharp decline in India's growth numbers is pulling down global growth prospects, to get a sense of what Indian industry thinks of India's position at Davos and in the larger global story, we've got some of India's foremost industrialists. I want to start by introducing CP Gurnani of Tech Mahindra. So welcome. Flanking him is Chandrajit Banerjee from the Confederation of Indian Industry, bringing the entire Indian industry delegation together. Adar Poonawalla, welcome sir, and also finally Vikram Kirloskar. Thank you so much for joining us. I interviewed Geeta Gopinath, the chief economist of the International Monetary Fund. Rather alarmingly, she said that the downward revision in global GDP numbers, 80% of that contribution is because of the sharper than expected decline of the Indian growth numbers. Mr. Gurnani, as a company that deals with the world, what are you making of this alarming statement coming from the IMF?
So I think Geeta has only done the maths. So I would not attribute too much to her statement. The fact is, India is started playing a very important role, and it's not it's very unusual that a growth rate which was running at 8 to 10% is now at 4 to 5%, and it obviously impacts the global growth rates. I think more important is not what we are doing now, but what is our outlook in the medium term and what will be our outlook in the longer term. Most of us need to rally together. We are here at World Economic Forum. First time actually, I'm feeling bad that India is not actually represented as one nation, one team. We have the Indian Adda, but truncated. We have Karnataka, we have MP, we have Telangana, different small lounges. I wish India could rally together because the globe is connected. It is high time we realize we need to be connected.
That's a very important point that Mr. Gurnani makes, because as I was walking on the Davos promenade, I saw a separate lounge for Madhya Pradesh, one for Karnataka, one for Telangana. The Karnataka Chief Minister Yedurappa, rather unlikely in a ill-fitting suit, but it's not coming together as one. Chandrajit Banerjee, you were here 2 years ago when Prime Minister Modi came. All across the Davos promenade, there was India everywhere. From there, it's almost as if we've fallen off the world's eye view.
It's not like we have fallen off the world's eye view. It's what's happening is the story of India is really in the States, and I agree that we should come together. It'll be a much stronger projection of India, but because the story of India is in the States have a lot to actually collect up in Davos. The States are doing well. States have a
but they're all doing their own thing.
They're doing their own thing, but when they're talking, if you've seen the way each one of them are talking, they're talking about India. They're coming onto a platform of innovations for India. They're coming into a platform of climate change, which cuts across. So they are on various horizontal sort of sessions that they are participating. But yes, the projection could be much more orchestrated, which will give a much stronger image of India. But as you see, there's a very strong presence of the Indian business, and it's as good as it has been in the past. Yes, and then we are led by the Commerce Minister, which is very relevant. And what we are seeing, India and Geeta Gopinath's what the comment that she has made, you can see the importance of India which is coming out, and truly there is a huge relationship to India and what is India doing, and what's India going to do, what are the next steps, what are the next good opportunities, would India be able to capitalize those opportunities. So it's a very strong sort of India, if one can say, expectations are from India very strong across all countries.
You're talking about Geeta Gopinath mentioning India, but that Adar Poonawalla is not in a good way. If the IMF thinks that the world's growth is slowing down largely because of India, what does that say about the mess we've landed ourselves in?
I don't know on what basis that statement was made. And I generally don't take economists seriously, because I believe in solutions and action. And these forecasts and where we could be going, where we are going, I don't think really helps the situation. I think we need to address the issues to address our growth in our country. I've always talked about ease of doing business, permissions and licenses being reduced or removed and provided online in a timely manner like you have in the West, decongesting our courts so that we can get on with contracts. And I think I figure is 900,000 crores which is stuck up in our country as litigation. Somehow decongest that, get matters heard and dispensed of, and you'll see that growth coming. And look, we're talking about India slowing down. I don't think it's slowed down. We've come back to a normal pace of growth. We were supercharged with the NBFCs and the liquidity that was there. People were spending and borrowing money, more than what they could afford to and spend, and that's what was happening. That consumption and that trend is cyclical, and it'll come back.
Kirloskar, how concerned are you about a perceptible lack of buzz around the India story at Davos this year? From being the toast of Davos, it's almost as if world money thinks we've got money, but we'll go where we want to go, and the world won't keep waiting for India.
Typically in a situation like this, if I look at what do I do in my company, it will be reflect on what's wrong, what are our own problems, how do we correct the situation. Very easy to say increase demand, we need demand to be increased. How do you increase demand? Just like that. It's easier said than done. You can't just give money to people to increase demand. I think India is going through a little bit of a structural change in terms of the way the consumer is looking at the whole situation. This is my feeling. People are looking for more competitive products. Number one, they see the same stuff, the cars I make, and the same car being available in a different country at a different price. And I think that there's a question in their mind that are they getting a good deal or not, or is there something that our costs are too high, or and we have to work hard to get it on. I think there's a structural change also going around. The structural change, we talked about the market, the car market. We used to have 2 or 3
shoots of recovery.
No, let me tell you, there are 2 or 3 cities which had metros. Now 18 cities have metros. There's Ola, Uber. So again, it's a change in the way people are using mobility.
But the automobile sector
I think it's
headlines largely for
reduction.
negative reasons.
Yes.
Are you seeing a change in that? Are you seeing a bottom somewhere?
See, we are certainly from this year we have changed our regulations on emissions, on safety. They're going to get tighter, further tighter in 2022 with CAFE 2. We'll be at global standards, which means our components can be sold anywhere in the world because it's the same level of technology that's required. I do see, I'm always optimistic on India, and I do see a lot of optimism on the auto market going forward. Maybe not in the next quarter, perhaps 2 or 3 quarters down the line.
So Gurnani, what's the buzz you're picking up here at Davos? What more would the world like to see from the Indian government, from the policy ecosystem, to make it more viable and attractive for global dollars to come to India?
I spend most of my time in bilateral meetings with the global business community. Clearly, India is still top of their mind. You have to remember, most parts of the world, you're talking about negative yield, negative interest rates, and India is still giving them a decent return. Even if you adjust it for inflation, adjust it for currency swap ratios, you are still seeing a decent return. Frankly, everybody is talking about increasing their footprint. It is not unusual that every CEO now visits India. Earlier it used to be once in 2 years, now it is twice in a year. If there is anything that global CEOs are concerned about, it is the judicial reforms. Because all said and done, if a Supreme Court takes a decision which in a way hurts the industry, I mean, all this current levies on the telecom companies, I mean, where are they going to pay from? And I don't think any one of us has an answer when these global telcos are asking about what the future of telecom in India would be. On one end, Tech Mahindra is talking about 5G. We're talking about 5G rollouts all around the world. And here we are finding one of our biggest employers, one of our biggest success stories in acute distress. So I think judicial reforms has to become a priority this year. I am not worried about economy because I promise you, everybody in the world wants to do business in India.
Mr. Kirloskar, there were some comments about how when one of the world's richest men came to India, the Indian government poked him in the eye, saying he's not doing anyone a favor by coming with his money. Do you think that's the wrong approach when it comes to trying to attract FDI into India with great difficulty? You find the investors and you poke them in the eye?
I don't want to talk on that specific issue. It's the gentleman here is probably both are here. You can talk with them. But I think as a country, we do need money from everyone, and I've always told that to anyone who comes, please come with money, please come with technology, please come with your markets as well. We have our markets. Please come with skill upgradation. Please come with management as well. So we've asked for everything, and I think we should humbly accept what we can get.
Mr. Banerjee, you've been part of many industry delegations that have met with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and with others in government ahead of the build-up to the budget. What would CII like to see from this budget? Now, there have been so many mini budgets following the main budget that came in the middle of last year, but what would you like to see in a few days from now?
So actually, you're right. This thing around the budget, that everything has to be within the budget, is not right. And actually, therefore, in the last couple of months, we have seen many announcements coming out. Some of them being quite major. But one would really like to see some very important announcements coming. And one thing which happens in Davos is Davos happens just before the India's budget, and every time there is an expectation that there's something waiting in India to come up. But I would think that what's required at this point in time is certain triggers which will really trigger.
What specific triggers are you looking
We
at?
need to see we need to see a bold way of seeing how we can play around with the fiscal. In fact, we need to breach it to see to it that we are focused on qualitative investments into especially infrastructure. That's something which is extremely important. One of the points which also came up has been the huge amount of money stuck in delayed payments, and I think that's something which the government would need to look at as to how we can ease that. And there are many ways of doing it, and one not
So the
wanting
government
to.
reduced corporate taxes very dramatically.
Indeed.
There was a sense, and at least for a few days, there was a huge amount of jubilation. It hasn't so far led to.
It will. I would.
substantial investments.
I think it will. I mean, obviously, this was a necessary step, but that's not a sufficient step. But the necessary step has been taken. We also require certain institution mechanisms. See, we do not have something like what we had earlier, a developmental bank, which is extremely important at this point in time, where we are looking at long-term infrastructure planning. So that's something that we would look forward to see in the budget. The NBFCs, as was mentioned, we still need dedicated apportionment of funds for the NBFCs, for them to really be much more liquid. And I think there are certain very critical measures of which the budget can trigger off for the economy.
Mr. Kirloskar, as President, what would you like to see from Nirmala Sitharaman in her main budget? Nowadays, there are lots of sub-side budgets as well, but in the main budget that she presents in the beginning.
I think we've talked about basically the same points. Is push the goalpost on the budget deficit, but use it for some very productive. There should be the structural and infrastructural investments that you do must have a return, short term or long term. Even long term is fine, but it should be on a returnable basis.
No, Adar,
This
the
is
sense
one.
that I get is that India Inc. is largely depending on the government to open its purse strings, to forget about the fiscal deficit, and then to help the economy bounce back. Why aren't large parts of India Inc. going out and spending their own money? What's holding them back? We've heard different
Listen,
theories,
if you have,
we've heard fear, we've heard paranoia.
I've heard this a lot.
Yes.
But if you have a capacity situation, you're using 60% of your capacity. Why would you invest in excess capacity?
No, why put the entire
Then
onus
why?
on
See,
the government to-
until people start buying and your factories fill up, no one is going to invest.
You know, the government, Adar Poonawalla, thinks that this is rather unfair, where India Inc. largely puts the onus on the government. That you open your purse strings, you start spending money, you forget about fiscal.
That's not true.
prudence.
I don't think that's
that's
true.
not
And they
true,
think that
Rahul.
it's time that, no, but ministers have said this publicly, that we've done our bit, now it's for the, now it's for.
No, I agree with you, Rahul. We have to do our part, which we are. But I think where the government can play a role, instead of looking at just their purse strings, is regulation. As I said, if you just decongest all these permissions and licenses, make it online. There was a small gathering which Prime Minister Modi addressed and mentioned, and I don't know if this is going to be implemented, but he said for small businesses of a certain size, for 3 years no one will come and inspect you, and you will get a deemed permission to start. And I don't know if you heard this. And if that happens also, it's great. I hope he can do that for larger businesses also, because that way setting up a new factory, new products, whatever you want to launch and what industry can do gets a boost for 3 years, and then if you've done something wrong, then you have to pay the price. Or if you've not complied, let's look at those reforms. Let's see what government can do there. We're not asking for any handouts. We're just asking for ease of doing business in all these other respects.
One of the other things that Geeta Gopinath at the IMF spoke about was policy uncertainty and frequent changes.
Yes.
Tax slabs of the GST. I want to ask that question to Sumant Sinha. Regulatory uncertainty and frequent changes. How much of an impediment is that to bringing India Inc. into a zone where they feel they want to put their own money into the India story again?
And I'll just, if I may just add one part, is that, you've got these states which are renegating from PPAs. This is a very serious issue. You look at Andhra and many other states, you have investment happening over there, you have a signed PPA, and then you renegotiate a power agreement. How will anyone invest? So if these things are addressed...
And you have Singapore investors coming to change your capital.
So that's all I wanted to add.
That, some of them politically driven, some of them driven by regulation.
It's a very
How much
bad
of an
impression.
impediment is that?
No, it's a huge issue. I think one of the most important things for any business to do well is policy stability. Now, I would say at the central level, there is a general sense of stability as to where the government wants to go in terms of our sector, for example. How to get that, however, there's a lot of thinking around that, and nothing, we're still waiting for something very tangible to emerge. There's a group of ministers that has been constituted headed by the Home Minister, so we're hopeful that something concrete comes out of that. But the point that Adar talked about, which is this issue of sanctity of contracts, that's a real bummer. And you talk to people here, you talk to investors globally, you talk to obviously people like us as well. That kind of thing is just unconscionable. You cannot do business in the country if you have that kind of thing happening. So sanctity of contracts very critical. The second thing is enforcement. If you go to the courts and it takes you 3, 4, 5 years and you have to service debt because the lenders are sitting on your head, then you're done for.
You
right?
deal most with foreign clients. I interviewed the US Commerce Secretary, and this is the one thing that he was doing about the most, that you come in given a certain set of circumstances, a certain set of assumptions, and those assumptions can change.
I think again, whether it is Steve Munchin or whether it is any investor, including India, the reality is that this, discontinuity between what a mayor of a city would be talking, between what a state chief minister would be talking, and what the ultimate parliament would say and what the Supreme Court would say. Trust me, it is a stress which is totally unnecessary. And I'll give you my example. We acquired Satyam about 11 years ago. All the overseas cases got resolved in less than 18 months. And the Indian cases are still hanging.
Really?
They are still hanging.
How close are they to resolution?
I mean, who knows? Because there's always the next appellate court. There's always the next.
Give us a broad
there is the
sense,
next
out of-
tribunal.
Out of the total number of cases as a percentage, how many are still pending in India?
So I think, overall, we had about 60 cases overseas and about 40 cases in India. Out of 40, the major 5 are still pending.
35 are resolved, but the big 5 are still
The big
pending.
5 are still pending.
And out of the 60 internationally, each one of them got
Each
resolved.
of them got resolved in less than 18 months. Because the court system there is incentivized to go in for arbitration. We also have arbitration laws in India. But there is always one more way of delaying an arbitration.
No, I'll give you an example. We had the safeguard duty that was implemented about a year and a half ago. Now you had to first go to the regulator. If you had a protection of change in law, you had to first go to the central regulator. The central regulator took about 9 months to pass something. Then you go to the state regulator, get him to agree. Then you go to the state discom and say, now pay me this amount that I've already paid to the customs guys, right? When I was importing the solar panels. And you can keep fighting with them. And if they want to appeal this, you can be locked away for several years trying to get your money back.
So the government's been laying a lot of emphasis, especially on GST, of ensuring that all companies get the refunds that are due to them. What's the buzz that you're picking up, Mr. Banerjee? Has that started happening? Has the government indeed started returning the money that's due to small traders, big companies? Because that's been a big logjam as well.
So that's what I've been saying, that basically we need to see to it that we are able to give it. When it happens in bits and pieces, there are other backlogs which have been coming on. So there are simple ways of actually solving it.
So it's not happened so far.
No, large companies, GST is smooth. I don't have a single delay on
No,
repayments.
GST has been a
GST has been very, very
policy
smooth.
reform, and I promise you that most of us are very happy with that GST reform.
It's very good for especially the large, mid-sized manufacturing as well as the services sector. It's where the small traders which come in where there are still issues. And I think that's what we need to see, how we can ease that cash flow situation.
You know, one of the highlights today, kicking off the World Economic Forum, was American President Donald Trump. I'll ask the guests we have over here what they thought of the big Trump address. And President Trump comes to India in just a few weeks from now. There's a talk of a limited trade deal being signed as well. And of course, building up to his big election, he'd love to show that. He spoke a lot about the trade deal he's recently signed with China and with Canada and Mexico. Let's listen to some excerpts of President Trump. You heard Donald Trump, Mr. Gurnani? What did you make of his address? There's a lot of mirth, and just before he came in, first he made everybody wait. He didn't show up on time, which is very, very unusual here in Davos. There was a Swiss band which was playing. Everybody was laughing all the way through. Some are still laughing even here. What do you make of Trump's address?
I mean, I didn't know if it was an election speech or whether it was.
Of course it was an election speech. Where's the doubt? Where's the confusion?
So I mean, that he has made America great again. I mean, we heard it many times, and the fact is that economy is doing well, and he is the best guy to blow his own trumpet. I mean, so
His name
I
is
think
Trump after all.
yeah.
So he has to blow his trumpet.
And the President Trump chose not to talk about climate change. While
he
everybody
spoke of planting some 1 million trees or something.
1 trillion.
And he said, forget everything else, it doesn't matter, it's all a hoax.
So the point again is that while others are talking about climate emergency, our man was not exactly that worried.
Speaking
about,
of the
But
climate,
he did claim that America has the cleanest air and the cleanest water it's ever had.
no, he also said, China and America have never had better relations than this. Despite all the acrimony of the past several months, he said, she is for China, I am from America, apart from that we're great friends. What did you make, Mr. Sinha, of the Trump address here at Davos and his forthcoming visit to India, which is just now a few weeks away?
You know, I think just to respond on the climate change point, the sad thing is actually behind all of this that by the US pulling out of the climate accord, it has actually made other countries' climate actions also somewhat weaker because there's no real moral pressure. If the biggest economy in the world can pull out of the climate accord, then why can't other smaller economies also pull out at some level? And so that's really the dangerous part, that there is a possibility that the whole Paris Climate Agreement could slowly unwind or unravel, and or that the efforts on climate change might become weaker. I think as far as I really don't have a view on his visit to India. I think it's great if it helps foster better relations between India and the US and helps us sign that ever elusive trade deal, which has been in discussions for a while.
Mr. Kirloskar, with the US Commerce Secretary, what's your sense of India-America ties at this time in the context of this much talked about but still highly elusive trade deal?
See, frankly, US is one of the largest markets for us. Whether it's goods, services, certainly it's one of the largest markets. And I think it's important to have a trade deal. If we say we can't export to the US, I think we'll be in trouble as a country, number one. The money does come from the US. There's a lot of, whether it's direct investment or whether it's venture capital. Of course, we've had some Chinese stuff coming in recently, but traditionally it's always been from the US, most of this money coming in. I think it's important to have a trade deal. It's important to have probably a military deal as well. I think both are
So
required.
we've had an interesting conversation.
US needs India more than we would like to think. Today, what India contributes to their economy, the number of jobs that Indian IT industry has created in US, I think nobody is really talking about.
What's
it.
the number in your view?
I think it is approximately 50,000 jobs a year, and you take it over the years. So it is a huge part that Indian IT industry is directly employing. Even if you look at the visa patterns, all the big five, the Indian IT industry does not apply for that many H1B visas. We are like 5%, 90% go to the bigger companies. So I think this, President Trump's visit to India, and I personally feel that Prime Minister Modi did a phenomenal job of reaching out to President Trump. That Houston walk, I think it was a bold step from Mr. Modi, and overall the relationship is a lot better than what it was in the first 2-3 years of President Trump's administration. And I think the communication between the two countries about the importance of each other, both from a political point of view, from a the military point of view, and as well as from a business point of view, I think both the countries recognize the importance.
In conclusion, Mr. Banerjee, if a trade deal does go through, would that provide some ease to the string of negative news around the economy, both domestically and internationally?
So the US is a very strong market for India, and we do expect a trade deal to happen.
Right,
I think it's good that there's been a lot of substantial discussions around it, so that
Keeps your face warm.
And
Feet
I
cold.
think once we are able to enter into it, it opens up a huge opportunity for India. It's good for America, it's good for India. Both the countries need each other very much, and it is extremely important that we stay committed to it. And I'm sure that this trade deal would be a huge trigger, which we all expect now. China was their priority. They've done with China, so it's next to India, and I'm sure that India would gain. Indian mid-sized companies, besides the large companies, would actually gain from this trade.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all our guests.
Thanks, sir.
At Davos, thank you very much.